We continue now at the top of Daf 79b Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 79b. On the previous Amud, there was a machlokas tanoim. Let's say a person has intention to kill one person and then kills another person. Is there a death penalty in that case? The Rabbanan say that there is a death penalty in that case, and Rabbi Shimon says there's no death penalty in such a situation. And the Gemara says we understand, according to the Rabbanan, the source can be from the pasuk v'nasata nefesh tachas nefesh. That's talking about a situation where two men are fighting. One is intending on killing the other, and then instead of killing that person, instead he strikes a woman who's pregnant and she has a miscarriage. And so the implication of the pasuk is that if that woman that he struck, if she actually died, v'nasata nefesh tachas nefesh, it would be a soul for a soul, and there would be a death penalty. That is a case where the person had intention to kill one person and then killed another person. So that would serve as the source of the Rabbanan. But the Gemara asked, according to Rabbi Shimon, what do you do with v'nasata nefesh tachas nefesh? And the Gemara says Rabbi Shimon would say that it's talking just like Rebbe says. Rebbe says that pasuk is talking about mammon. There's a monetary payment you have to pay to the heirs of the woman if you should kill the woman. And we learn that out from the following. Again, it says v'nasata nefesh tachas nefesh, a language of nesina, and it also says nesina lamal. It also says a language of nesina above. Rashi says nesina lamal gabe lo yeh ason v'nosan beflilim demei valdus. That's the part where it's talking about paying for the value of the child when there's a miscarriage. And so Rebbe says, Ma'lahalan mammon, just like over there, the term nesina v'nasan beflilim is talking about money. Afkan mammon, so too over here by v'nasat nefesh tachas nefesh, it's talking about money. And so again, that's how Rabbi Shimon is going to interpret that pasuk as well. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, Hai the Talmud of Echizkiah, the following teaching of the Talmud of Echizkiah, Mapka mider Rebbe, Mapka mider Rabbanan. It doesn't follow Rebbe, and it also does not follow the Rabbanan. The Talmud of Echizkiah, because it was taught in the yeshiva of Chizkiah, Make Adam Make Behema. The pasuk talks about striking a man and striking an animal, and we compare the two. Ma Make Behema, just like when striking an animal, Lo Chilaktu ba ben Shogeg Lamezid, ben Miskaven L'Sheino Miskaven, ben Derech Yerida L'Derech Aliyah. Just like we find by striking an animal that we don't make any distinctions between if it happens by mistake or on purpose, whether with intention or without intention, whether it happens in a downward motion or an upward motion. Lepotro Mammon, Ela L'Chayvo Mammon. In all of those situations, we're never going to say there's an exemption. We're always going to say that there's a chiyuv to pay by monetary damages in such cases. We're always going to say that the person has to pay. As Rashi explains, Lepotro Mammon Kolomar Lo Chilakta Bo Shum Tzad Lihi Poter Min Tashlumin. In all of these situations, you're never going to get out of paying. Ela Bechol Tzadin Hu Demechayiv. In all these scenarios, the Ravinan Kol Nizakin, but Baba Kama, because all kinds of damages are included in Baba Kama, Min Petza Tachas Potza, from the pasuk of Petza Tachas Potza, L'Chayiv Ala Shogeg Kamezid V'Alonis Kirotza, Numaka Behema Nezaku, you're chayiv to pay for mistakes just like on purpose, you're chayiv to pay for accidents just like if it was done willingly. And again, Make Behema, striking an animal is a kind of damage, and so therefore again by striking an animal, we don't make those distinctions. And so just like we say by striking an animal, we don't make those distinctions, you have to pay money. Af Make Adam, so too when it comes to striking a person, Lo Tachlok Bo Ben Shogeg Lemezid Ben Miskaven L'Shein Miskaven Ben Derech Yerida L'Derech Aliyah. We're not going to make a distinction between mistake and on purpose, between with intention, without intention, between a downward motion and an upward motion. L'Chayiv Mammon, to say he's chayiv to pay. Ela Lepotro Mammon, rather we're going to say that he's actually potter. There is no monetary payment when it comes to striking a person. Rashi explains, Afmaka Adam Ein Din Pitor Tashlumin Hakasa Bo Chiluk L'Shum Tzad. When we say that there's no payment of money, when you strike a person, there could be a situation where there's going to be a death penalty, there could be a situation where you're going to go to Golas, to exile, but there is no payment of money. So we say that there's no distinction, L'Shum Tzad She'yischayiv Mammon Ela Kol L'Shah Pater Mimammon. In all scenarios, by striking a person, we're going to say he's pater from paying money, and again, talking about killing a person, Bein B'Shogeg, whether it happens by mistake, Vein Eskaven, or if there's no intention to pater Mimisa, where there you're exempt from the death penalty, Bein B'Mezid V'Neskaven D'Chayiv Misa, or whether it happens on purpose with Kavana, where you're chayiv the death penalty, but you're always going to be pater in terms of a monetary payment. Again, as the Gemara says, we're not going to make that distinction. Ela Lepotro Mammon, rather he'll always be exempt from having to pay. And the Gemara now says, now my she'in miskaven. Now the Talmud of Echizkiah, what does it mean that without intention there's no payment of money? Ilema she'in miskaven klal. If you're going to say that there's no intention at all, hainu shogeg, that would be identical to doing it by mistake. Elab shita, rather it's obvious she'in miskaven lazeh ela lazeh, that what the brisa means, or what the Talmud of Echizkiah means is you didn't have intention to kill this person, rather you killed that person. And it says that he's not going to be obligated to pay any money. He's going to be exempt from a monetary payment. Now, if we're going to say that the person was liable to the death penalty in this case, it would not even be necessary. What would be the need to exempt from monetary payment? If you get the death penalty, of course you don't pay. Anytime there's a situation of a death penalty, you don't have to pay money. And so elalav, so rather is it not shma mino? You see from the Talmud of Echizkiah, lav bar katalahu, that in this case the person is not put to death. There is no death penalty, and so therefore it's not like the Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan say if you have intention to kill one person and you kill another person, we say there's a death penalty. V'lav bar memonu, but also there's no monetary payment. Again, Rebbe said that there's a monetary payment in a situation when you have intention to kill one and you kill a different person. But here again, the Talmud of Echizkiah is saying there's no monetary payment as well, and that's why we're saying that the Talmud of Echizkiah is not like the Rabbanan and also not like Rebbe. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, let's say you have a murderer who's mixed up with other people. The Gemara will explain who these other people are. So Kulan Peturin, since we can't identify the murderer among the group, so they are all exempt. Rabbi Yehuda says, Konsen Osan Lakipa, you have to gather them all into a vaulted chamber where eventually they will all die. And the Mishnah continues, let's say you have different people who are liable to death penalties, but different death penalties apply to different individuals, and all of these people get mixed up. You don't know which death penalty applies to which person. Nidonin bekala, you're always going to give everyone the lighter of the death penalties. And so therefore, haniskolin bin israfin, let's say you have people who are getting stoned mixed up with people who are getting burned. Rabbi Shimon Omer nidonin beskila. Rabbi Shimon says you give them skila, you give them stoning. Shas sreifa chamura, because burning is stricter. But the Chachamim say nidonin b'sreifa, you should give them burning. Shaskila chamura, because death penalty by stoning is the one that is stricter. Amar lehen Rabbi Shimon says to them, to the Chachamim, ilu lo haisa sreifa chamura, if not for the fact that sreifa was the stricter, the more difficult of the punishments, lo nitna lebas kohen shazin, so that wouldn't be given to the daughter of a kohen who commits adultery. Whatever punishment we give to the daughter of a kohen who commits adultery is surely the strictest of all punishments. Amrulo, they say back to him, ilu lo haisa skila chamura, if not for the fact that stoning was the most difficult, was the strictest, lo nitna lemegade full over avodas kochavim, that punishment would not have been given to the blasphemer and to the person who worships avodah zara, and therefore from the fact that skila is given to the megadef and the oved avodah zara, therefore we see that skila is actually stricter. And the Mishnah continues, haneheragin benechanakin, let's say you have those who are supposed to be beheaded, they get mixed up with those who are supposed to be strangled. Rabbi Shimon Omer b'sayif, Rabbi Shimon says the punishment should be sayif, beheading by the sword. That's the more lenient of the two punishments. But the Chachamim say chenek, strangulation, is the more lenient of the two punishments, and that's the one that should be applied. And the Gemara says, mana chayrim, in the first part of the Mishnah it says somebody who's supposed to get the death penalty gets mixed up with others, and so we had a machlokas tanoim there in the Mishnah. Again, according to the Tanna Kama, they're all exempt. According to Rabbi Yehuda, they all are put into a vaulted chamber to die. And so the Gemara says, who are these other people that this person is mixed up with? If you're going to say that it's other people who are completely kosher, they're innocent, and they shouldn't be put to death at all, so pshita, so then first of all the Tanna Kama is obvious that they're all going to be exempt. Visu, and further, B'hal Lema Rabbi Yehuda konsenos on Lakipa, would Rabbi Yehuda say in such a case that you put them all in a vaulted chamber to die? That also wouldn't make sense. Why would we kill innocent people? And the Gemara continues with a mnemonic, Siman Beis Shin Reish Kuf, that's a siman for the names of the Amoraim in the upcoming Gemara. Amar Rabbi Avo, Amar Shmuel, Rabbi Avo says that Shmuel says, Hach over here in the Mishnah, Barotzeach Shalom Nigmar Dino, we're talking about a murderer, but there was no verdict given for him. And he gets mixed up with other murderers, Shenigmar Dinan, where there already was a verdict, Askinon, that's what the Mishnah is dealing with. And so that explains the Machlokis. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold, Ein Gomrin Dino Shaladam El B'fanav. You can't conclude the court case of a person unless we are in front of the defendant, and we don't know who the defendant is, so we can never conclude this case. Hilkach Kulan Petur, and therefore they're all exempt. Rabbi Yehuda says, Mifterinu Legamri Namilo, we can't make him totally exempt. Kavan de Rotzchin Ninu Hilkach Konsonos on the Kippah, since they're all murderers, so again we gather them all into this vaulted chamber, and where they all will eventually die. And the Gemara continues with another explanation of the Mishnah. Reish Lakish says, "Ba'adam dekuli alma lo pligi de petiri." If we were talking about people, so we would certainly say they're exempt. There would be no machlokas tanaim if we were dealing with people in the Mishnah. Aval hacha, but over here in the Mishnah, b'shor, we're actually talking about where animals get mixed up. B'shor shalod nigmar dino shenesara b'shor macherim shenigmar dino. We're talking about an ox where there was no verdict. This is an ox that killed somebody, so it's supposed to be put to death, but there was no verdict, and it gets mixed up with other oxen which are also supposed to be put to death, and there was a verdict by the other oxen. Kamiflagi, that's what the Machlokas Tanaim is about. Rabbanan Savri, the Rabbanan hold Kamisas Bailim, Kach Misas Ashur. We apply the same rules of the death penalty of the owner to the death penalty by the ox. We apply the same rules to people to the ox as we would apply to people, and therefore Ve'in Gomrin Dino Shal Shor El B'Fanav. You can't conclude the court case against the ox unless the axe is in front of us, unless we have the axe in front of us. And so therefore Hilkach, therefore Kulin Petur, and therefore all of the oxen are now exempt. For Rabbi Yehuda Savar, but Rabbi Yehuda holds Konsenos on Lakipa, again, you gather them all into a vaulted chamber. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava. Rava says, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video, on Daf Pei Amar Aleph.